You don't need anyone to hurt you. You're already doing it yourself. Every day, inside your own mind. No one says anything that harsh. No one directly breaks you. But you still feel uncomfortable. You still feel left out. You still feel like you're not enough. You think the cause is other people, the situation, what happened. But the truth is, what happens is only a small part. The rest comes from you. A message not replied to, you don't see not yet. You see they're ignoring me. A plan delayed. You don't see not the right time yet. You see I'm falling behind. A passing glance. You don't see just a look. You see they're judging me. And the most dangerous part is, you don't even realize you're doing it. You don't realize that you're adding meaning to everything. You're writing extra stories onto things that are actually simple, and then you believe them so deeply that they start to feel real. You begin to react. You begin to change your behavior. Not because reality changed, but because the story in your head did. This is how you sabotage yourself. Not with big actions, but with small thoughts, repeated every day. And if you don't see this, you'll keep living in a version of life that wasn't created by the world, but by you. You don't notice this right away, because what you're doing feels very reasonable. It doesn't feel like you're making things up. It feels like you're understanding the situation. You're trying to connect the dots. You're trying to find a reason. You're trying to make things make sense. And that's exactly when things start to go off track. You stop seeing things as they are. You start building your own version of them, a version with logic, with emotion, that feels very real, but that doesn't mean it's true. You don't just see the event. You add what you think it means. Not they're quiet, but they're avoiding me. Not things are slowing down, but I'm being left behind. Not there's no result yet, but I'm not good enough. You don't create these thoughts randomly. You build them from your past, the times you were ignored, the times you were judged, the times you felt like you weren't enough. And now, whenever there's a gap, your mind doesn't leave it empty. It fills it with what's familiar, not what's true, but what's familiar. And what's familiar is often negative, not because you're weak, but because that's how you've been programmed. But the problem is, you don't stop at the thought. You believe it. You act on it. You start to pull back. You become defensive. You begin to change how you see yourself, not because reality changed, but because you accepted a story before ever checking if it was true. What makes all of this dangerous is not that you're thinking wrong. It's that you don't realize you are. Your thoughts don't show up as assumptions. They show up as facts. You don't hear them like a voice in your head. You feel them as something obvious. I'm being ignored. Things are going in the wrong direction. I'm not good enough. No question marks. No pause. No checking. Just a conclusion. And when a thought feels like the truth, you have no reason to doubt it. That's when you start losing something very important, the ability to tell the difference between what is actually happening and what you're thinking about it. A small event happens, but you don't keep it at its original size. You expand it. You add the past. You add fear. You add things that haven't even happened. And then, you're standing in front of an exaggerated version of reality, a version big enough to make you react more than necessary. But to you, it feels completely reasonable because it has logic. It connects to your past experiences. It matches what you felt before, and that's exactly what makes it more dangerous. Because you don't see it as wrong. You see it as familiar, and what's familiar is always easier to believe than what's true. Your brain doesn't prioritize truth. It prioritizes consistency. It wants everything to fit with what you've believed before, even if what you believed was never accurate. So whenever something happens, your brain doesn't ask, "Is this true?" It asks, "Does this match what I already believe?" And if the answer is yes, it accepts it immediately. No checking, no questioning, just confirmation. And from that moment, you're no longer seeing the world as it is. You're seeing the world through a belief system you've never actually questioned. And the truth is, as long as you believe your thoughts are facts, you'll keep living in a version of reality that wasn't created by life, but by you. And the problem doesn't stop at misunderstanding things. It starts to shape how you live. Little by little, you don't approach life the same way anymore. You become more cautious. You try less. You trust less. Not because the world changed, but because you started believing it isn't safe. You no longer walk into opportunities with curiosity. You walk in with doubt. It's no longer, "What could this bring me?" It becomes, "How could this disappoint me?" You don't see people as they are anymore. You see them through what you fear they might do. You expect rejection in things that were never rejection. You go on the defensive before there's even a reason to. And slowly, you begin to shrink your world. You avoid uncertainty. You avoid difficult conversations. You even avoid opportunities, just because they don't feel safe right away. You call it being careful, but in reality, it's fear. A very subtle kind of fear. It doesn't shout. It's not obvious. It quietly adjusts how you choose, how you react, how you move forward, until you're no longer living based on what's possible. You're living based on what you're trying to avoid. And from that moment, your life is no longer shaped by reality. It's shaped by the things you believe could hurt you, even if they've never actually happened. And over time, it's no longer just how you see things. It becomes how you see yourself. At first, it's just a passing thought. "I'm not good enough. I always get overlooked. Everything is harder for me." But when you repeat it long enough, it's no longer just a thought. It becomes part of you. You stop saying, "I'm thinking this," and you start saying, "This is who I am." You label yourself, quietly, naturally, but dangerously, because once you believe that this is your nature, you start acting like it. You stop trying as much as before. "Because I'm not the kind of person who can do this." You stop opening up. "Because I'm always the one who gets left behind." You stop expecting more. "Because things never work out for me anyway." You're no longer living based on your potential. You're living based on a story you accepted. And the scary part is, you don't see it as limiting yourself. You think you're just understanding yourself better. But in reality, you're seeing yourself through an old version, a version shaped by disappointment, by pain, by misunderstandings you never went back to question. And from that point on, your choices start to change, not because of your current reality, but because of a past story you're still carrying as the truth. But there will be a moment, not when you try to change, but when you begin to see you're no longer pulled into your thoughts right away. You pause, just for a second, but long enough to realize one thing: this is just how I'm interpreting it, not the truth. Just an interpretation, and that moment is the first time you create space. Space between you and your thoughts. Before, everything happens so fast. Something happens, a thought appears, a feeling comes. You react, no space, no choice, just reaction. But when you start to notice your thoughts, that chain slows down. The situation still happens. The thought still appears, but you don't jump into it right away. You observe it. You see how it forms. You see it trying to assign meaning. You see it pulling you back into old stories. And if you don't rush to believe it, it starts to lose its power. It doesn't disappear instantly, but it's no longer in control. You don't need to get rid of the thought. You just need to stop identifying with it. No need to argue. No need to fight it. Just don't automatically assume it's true. And from that moment, you begin to experience the same world, in a completely different way, not because the world changed, but because, for the first time, you're no longer letting your thoughts decide your entire experience. When you start creating that space, things don't disappear right away. Thoughts still come. Old stories still show up. Your mind still tries to explain everything. But something has changed. You no longer rush into it. Before, every thought was like a hook. The moment it appeared, it pulled you in. No awareness. No pause. But now, the hook is still there. You just don't grab it anymore. You see it. You understand what it's trying to do. But you don't react right away. And the strange thing is, when you stop feeding it, it starts to lose strength. It doesn't last as long. It doesn't repeat endlessly. It doesn't take over your mind anymore. A negative thought shows up, and then it passes. An uncomfortable feeling appears. But it doesn't spread. You no longer feel the need to fix everything in your head. You no longer feel the need to figure out every emotion. You begin to realize, not everything that shows up in your mind needs to be handled. Some things just need to be seen and left alone. And slowly, you start to feel lighter, not because life got easier, but because you stopped amplifying everything. You no longer turn a small moment into something that lasts all day. You no longer let one thought define your entire mood. And that's when you start to regain something you didn't even realize you had lost: freedom within your own experience. When you start creating that space, things don't disappear right away. Thoughts still come. Old stories still show up. Your mind still tries to explain everything. But something has changed. You no longer rush into it. Before, every thought was like a hook. The moment it appeared, it pulled you in. No awareness. No pause. But now, the hook is still there. You just don't grab it anymore. You see it. You understand what it's trying to do. But you don't react right away. And the strange thing is, when you stop feeding it, it starts to lose strength. It doesn't last as long. It doesn't repeat endlessly. It doesn't take over your mind anymore. A negative thought shows up, and then it passes. An uncomfortable feeling appears, but it doesn't spread. You no longer feel the need to fix everything in your head. You no longer feel the need to figure out every emotion. You begin to realize, not everything that shows up in your mind needs to be handled. Some things just need to be seen and left alone. And slowly, you start to feel lighter, not because life got easier, but because you stopped amplifying everything. You no longer turn a small moment into something that lasts all day. You no longer let one thought define your entire mood. And that's when you start to regain something you didn't even realize you had lost: freedom within your own experience. And that's when you begin to understand, peace is not when everything becomes perfect. Not when everything is clear. Not when everything goes the way you want. Peace is when you no longer need those things. You're still living in the same world. There's still uncertainty. There are still people you don't fully understand. Things still don't go as planned. But inside, it's no longer chaotic like before. Not because problems disappeared, but because you stopped amplifying them. You no longer rush to assign meaning, no longer rush to conclusions, no longer rush to react. Something happens, and it stops there. It doesn't get dragged out. It doesn't get distorted. It doesn't get turned into a story. And for the first time, you experience life without needing to understand everything, without needing to control it, just simply letting it happen. And in that space, there's a kind of quiet you've never touched before. And from that point, you start to see something very clearly. You don't need to fix the world. You don't need to change other people. You don't need everything to be clear, to be okay. The only thing that confuses you is not life itself. It's the way you're reading it. You're not stuck in your situation. You're stuck in your interpretation of it. And when you see this, things don't suddenly become easier, but they become simpler. You no longer have to solve everything at once. You just need to stop adding what isn't there. And that alone is enough to change your entire experience. You're not living in reality. You're living in how you interpret it. And most of your pain doesn't come from what happens. It comes from what you add to it. If you start to see this, things won't become easier, but they will feel lighter. If this resonates with you, comment 6. I'll show you what your mind has been hiding from you.